Welcome to the Business Trendsetter podcast, where we talk about trends and how to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartung.
We are Spark Partners. We help companies and entrepreneurs to grow. If you have any questions or you want to explore our website, go to sparkpartners.com. We are also on Futures TV, on Apple TV, and Roku TV. And today's topics really have to do with small businesses, medium-sized businesses. You know, Adam and I talk to lots of folks, and some of them we bring on our show regarding their business. And so we want to come today and talk about some of the ones that we've discussed in the past, and we've had guests in the past. And really the aim here is to look at these businesses and your own business through the lens of the Spark Partners lens of trends, of understanding your customer, because at the end of the day, we're here as a service to really help you to grow. And both Adam and I do coaching. We have a course, and we live and breathe this. We love to see companies grow and expand. And you know what? Sometimes it's tough love when we have these conversations with these folks, because it's sometimes hard to hear that you're in the wrong place, wrong time. So we're going to do an update of a number of folks. And I guess before I jump into the list, Adam, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, times have changed. I started making public predictions about 15 years ago when I was asked by Forbes to write a weekly column for them. And I wrote over 400 columns, and end of 2017 is about when I quit writing columns. The reason I quit writing columns, by the way, was because they couldn't afford to pay me enough to make it worthwhile. We did an initial contract, and every single year they would, my pay, they'd write a contract, my pay would reach some limit, and then they'd say, that's too much, we don't pay that much. They'd rewrite the contract and tell me I could either take it or leave it. So that was, for anybody ever wondered why I quit doing Forbes. But blogs and columns like Forbes, they don't reach as many people as podcasts do, so we switched over to podcasts, and that changed the format. But back when I was writing blogs, it was making a lot of predictions. Well, why do I make predictions? And some people thought it was so that they could get investment advice. I would talk about Amazon, I would talk about Netflix, Google, and I'd talk about companies that weren't doing well, like Microsoft and IBM and General Electric. And that really wasn't why I wrote those blogs. The reason was to say, we as leaders of companies, we as managers, have the ability to look at trends and apply those trends to our business so we make better business decisions. And that's why the columns were not published in the finance section or the money section of Forbes. They were published under leadership, because it was trying to say, hey, learn that you can understand the world around you, you can understand your marketplace, and you can use those trends to make better decisions to advance your company. And that's what we're really all about. It's not this podcast isn't intended to be a should I be buying Meta or not buy Meta. It should be what are the decisions that are being made, and they're likely to be good decisions or bad decisions. And we go public with them because it establishes a track record. And you start saying, hey, can Adam and Manny make forecasts, and do they come out the way they want? And the good news is that I have a almost 15-year public track record of forecasts, and I've never really blown it. I've only made small misses in timing along the way, but never had a big miss, never had one that was just off. And that's not because I'm some kind of a genius, but because it's the approach that we preach. It's looking externally, looking at trends, building scenarios. And the more you do that, the more you practice, the better you get, then the better you're able to say, hey, if they make this decision, it's going to be good. If they make an alternative decision, it's likely to be bad. And so we go public with that, saying that we're here to apply this to companies. We're here to help you think that through. We're here to bring those future trends back to you, help you understand the scenarios, and help you make better decisions. So let's talk about some of the ones that talked with us here on air.
Yeah, let me bring up the list. And I would add to that, Adam, that when we've got this course, and we get feedback from our students that are involved, or we have these coaching clients, and it's really, really refreshing, and it's nice to hear that they're able to actually grow or advance their business. Or in some cases, a recent conversation I had with somebody, they had a near miss where they basically, their company was in danger of collapsing, but they took some of what they learned in the course, and they were able to take a sidestep into an adjacent market that was beaming and booming with more opportunity. And this goes back to the same thing. Everybody who's a business leader, who's at the helm of a business, whether you're an owner or an executive, it's up to you to really look at what's happening in the world with these trends and these customer conversations and these scenarios, and make predictions for your own company. And so the first company we want to talk about is called Insulin Now. Now, I think at the time when we interviewed Micah, the name of the company was Diabetes Now. So just a quick refresher for our viewers and our listeners. Her company was really was set around helping people with diabetic needs, particularly insulin, get a less expensive insulin by using some Canadian suppliers and by doing some lobbying and some collective bargaining, basically. So that's been what's been going on. And last time I spoke with her, she through the pandemic was relatively hard to manage because everybody's eyes were elsewhere, and so she kind of put it on ice for a bit. But as I understand, is she's back in the business of making these alignments.
So again, what we talk about is, understanding an unmet need. For some rather random reasons, when I was in college in the late 1970s, a vial of insulin, that's a vial that had multiple shots in it, it was $5 or $7. And now I think that same vial was something like $700 or maybe even more. And so what happened was that the way pharmaceuticals were manufactured and sold led to some people getting out of products that they considered to be generic. And then people got control of the generic markets and jacked up the prices. And then, we left it up with the whole insurance shenanigans. People using insurance companies to pay for drugs allowed the prices to escalate like crazy. We wouldn't have good regulatory behavior over it, and we didn't have any good negotiating power on any side. And it caused the market to just it created a real need. There was an unmet need of people who absolutely can't live without a product like insulin. And yet here the product had gone from $5 to $700, no good justifiable cost-based reason for it. And what she identified was this need really was something that needed to be met. So I think that, her interest was in the right place, and her struggle was really, could she build a value delivery system to make it happen?
Yeah, she did. And, one of the things we've discussed in the past, and a little bit of an axe to grind on my side with the whole startup methodology. We hear about startups have been studied for not that long, maybe 15, 20 years, right? And then business has only been like 80, 90 years as a concern, not economics per se, but business as it stands. But, we hear about this thing of go interview your customers, go interview 10 or 100 people and see what they tell you. But the real issue is people have a tendency to go interview people that in the wrong way, right? They go and they ask their friends or family, their Facebook people, and everybody's going to tell them what they want to hear, right? They don't want to upset them. But the real magic is go out and talk to the people that are going to spit in your face. You're going to learn the most. And I think that's one thing that she did is she went out and explored not just the immediate people that were surrounding her, but the people that would be potentially her competitors, her enemies per se. Yeah, so she did a really good job at doing that.
Long time ago, there was a client of mine, and they found out about me and what I did. It was they were in Chicago, and they made barcode printers, and they were a very, very successful company. And they said, "Look, we're going to have a workshop. We're going to bring in our biggest customers." And the person that heard me giving a speech called me up and said, "We're going to have one of these customer conferences." And I started saying, "Well, be really sure you know the right questions to ask." And so through some randomness, they ended up saying, "Well, we'll give you like 30 minutes on this schedule." I go in and I listen, and the whole first part of it is, how can we improve our product? How can we improve our distribution? How can we improve our customer service? And of course, the customers all had answers for those questions. When I got to my turn, I said, I've been doing some study, and I realized that there was an alternative technology that was 1/20th the price. Instead of using this company's printer, you could just use a plain old printer from somebody like HP, and you could get a driver from Microsoft. And this was not as good a technology, and the printers didn't stand up. You almost had to consider them disposable. Use it, pumping out these barcodes for maybe 6 or 7 months, and just throw the thing away. Don't bother to fix it. And of course the drivers weren't as good, but they ran on a PC, and you could get the cheapest, today what we call a Chromebook level PC, and it would run it. And so my first question was, you all came prepared to help this company do better. They said, yes. I said, how many of you are doing a test with the alternative technology? And everybody raised their hand. And then I said, keep your hand up. If you are doing this with less than 1,000 PCs and printers, lower your hand. None went down. If you're doing it with less than 2,000 PCs and printers, lower your hand. None went down. If you're doing it with less than 10,000 PCs and printers, lower your hands. 2 people lowered their hands. And I turned and looked at the CEO, and he was white. He had no idea how close he was to the market completely shifting on him in a different direction. And that's the thing, is that we often don't ask the right questions when we talk to customers to really understand their needs. We'll ask the question in the framework of, how do I do better at doing what I've always done? Which is improving my value delivery system, not really recognizing unmet needs. And that's where she is. And I think she's still going down that road. And she's probably going to get some help with this new act that looks like it's going to go through Congress. It's going to help getting some negotiating power for sure. some of these pharmaceuticals. Yeah,
for sure. And, one thing to add to what you just said, Adam, regarding how these things all play out, it's oftentimes, if you're a roofer, the way you hold your hammer is way different than if you're a high-end cabinet maker, right? And so we go into these situations where all we see is nails everywhere. But if you bring Adam and I into the conversation, we're able to look at things objectively, and then you just got to sit tight and keep your mouth shut. Oftentimes we're giving our advice to folks, our professional advice, right? This is what we do, and there's an immediate sort of kickback, and there's this like defensive posture. And that defensive posture is something you really need to look at, because there's likely something behind that. I know many companies that, like when I mentioned the sidestep one, I can't mention more about what they do, but they avoided a near miss, and it wasn't an immediate thing that they recognized this pitfall. It took some internal work for this guy to say, you know what, you're right, I'm going in the wrong direction. And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
You reminded me of the mushroom guys. What were their names?
Desert Pearl Mushrooms. That's the next folks on the list here. So Desert Pearl Mushrooms, we interviewed them, and just as a reminder, they produce culinary mushrooms here in Southern Arizona. They produce oyster mushrooms and other varieties that are sort of high end, not necessarily the white button mushrooms that you see, or the portobello or the cremini mushrooms, but turkey tail and lion's mane and various types of king trumpet mushrooms, and I don't know, a bunch of other ones. So they were in the process of looking at what's next. And from then until now, they have expanded operations, not quite doubled their space, but pretty close. They have more ability to pump out product. So they're going to be looking at expanding out of Southern Arizona. They now rotate through about 10 or 12 different kinds of mushrooms, and they're aligned with a certain amount of trends. People want variety. People want, they're going after not only restaurants, but they're at farmers markets, they're at specialty markets, and they're excited about what's happening in this whole industry of, new ingredients. And I can't remember the name of the process that they use, but they're growing these things here in the desert, and they're able to do that and expand, and they're doing pretty well, actually.
So do you know how their revenues are split these days between farmers markets, the direct to public, and what they're selling to restaurants?
I would say, based on what I know about them, they're probably growing their restaurant business. I think farmers markets it's a good sort of stable foundation, but they're really looking at expanding into the restaurant space, into the home. Matter of fact, I was at a specialty market here in Tucson, where it's like a restaurant on one side and then like a kind of a high-end market on the other side. And lo and behold, I picked up myself a steak, and I walked by the produce aisle, and they had their mushrooms. So I picked up some, cooked it up, and so I think they're trying to grow that space into the restaurant and into the specialty market space.
One of the things we often find, and this is what I remember from talking to those fellows, is that to an entrepreneur, the world just could look like this huge, giant opportunity. And they chase all of the opportunities. Oh, I should sell in a direct-to-consumer through like a farmer's market. I should sell direct-to-consumer via the internet. I should sell direct-to-the-consumer by going to an alternative state. Oh, maybe I should get wholesale distribution. Oh, hey, I could go sell to restaurants. I could sell to five-star Michelin restaurants. I could sell to regular restaurants. And I see all these opportunities. And it becomes a real problem because you never have the resources to chase them all. So how do you figure out which ones you chase? A lot of times you get stuck just going down the route you've always gone down. If you started in farmers markets, you just keep doing more farmers markets. Why? Because that's what you know, and you're most comfortable if you keep going down that route. And I think the valuable discussion we had with those guys was helping them say there's a lot of opportunity for mushroom growth, for growing the mushroom market. It's a high protein vegetarian product. Veganism, vegetarianism are growth trends. That sort of plant-based protein is a growth trend. So they're on a trend. Where can you get the most bang for your buck? And I think as we talked that through, we said, the restaurant people could certainly, they had the ability to pay more. They're selling a dish for $30. So the mushrooms, they're not looking at the price per pound the same way you and I do when we're going to take some home to make something for dinner. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is that they did keep the farmers market business going, kept it robust, kept it expanding, but they put a little more energy into the restaurant side of the business, the culinary side of the business, which had higher margins.
Yeah, I think that they were probably like 30-70. 30% was restaurants and 70 was farmers markets back when we spoke to them. And I would say that that's probably the other way around now. And they're also experimenting with some dried mushrooms, and they're really starting to look at a systematic way to really increase their yield and get on the radar. I think that some of these large suppliers, the ones that supply restaurants, not directly, but using these middlemen that have a much larger reach. So now you become just a catalog item, which is actually a good thing, but I think they have some minimum quantity that they would have to supply to them. So I know that they've been working really hard to get to that level. And from my understanding, they're doing well, and I'm excited to see what happens next for them.
We had that conversation a week ago with Flying Leap Vineyards and Winery, where we discussed the fact that he was able to sell almost all the wine he made through the tasting rooms that he had in Arizona. Of course, that's direct to consumer. So he's getting 100% of the gross margin on the product. As he starts dabbling and trying to grow through distribution, now he's got to pay a distributor. He's got to let a retailer take a cut. So from that $50 bottle of wine where he's getting all the margin, now it goes down to, the distributor, the retailer needs to be able to buy that $50 bottle of wine for something like $30. That means the distributor wants to buy it for something like $20. So it's $50 wine he's not getting $20 for. And so he's been slow to develop that market because of the margin loss. And it's like no reason to do it unless you can really pump up the volume. And so as he said, now he's looking at that. He has increased the volume. He's trying to quadruple it again. And if he gets his volume up, then he'll be able to look at that market that's more where he has to reach a whole different cost point. And so talking that through is one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs need help with, because again, they just see the opportunities everywhere. How do I decide which one to chase? And over the last 15 years, we've found that it often, if you go through the process we have, it's not that hard to get to some pretty clear decisions.
Yeah, it's kind of a really kind of a funny little story here. I went to Mount Lemmon, which is a mountain here in Tucson that you go up, it's about 20 degrees cooler than town. On the way back down, I stopped to get some honey. There's a guy on the side of the road. And his logic was kind of, I don't know if I really understood it. So each jar of honey was $13. But if you bought 3 jars, it would go down to like $10. So I was like, okay, he's just really eroding his margin to try to pump out the volume. And he's not really in that kind of volume space. So I didn't mention it to him, but I just kind of thought it was interesting. The last folks we want to talk about.
I had that same experience recently, and I was buying some product at a farmer's market, and they had 2 size jars, and they had 3 varieties. And there was a little bit of a cost per ounce difference if you got the bigger jar. And I tasted the product, and anyway, I enjoyed it. And I said, hey, I'll take a big jar of the original. And the woman says, well, I don't have any big jars of the original. I only have big jars of this other. And I have small jars of the original. And I was kind of nudging her like, well, you ran out of it. It's not my fault. Couldn't you give me a price break or sell me 2 of the little ones. And she held firm on her pricing. She was like, if that's the one you want, I'll give you a little one, and it costs this much. If you want to try the flavored one, you get a bigger one, it costs this much. And that takes discipline. That takes discipline, and a lot of entrepreneurs forget that. They're ready. They want that sale. They want to grab that money, and sometimes you need to have a little bit of pricing discipline. And that sometimes is usually when you are running out of product. Look at Tesla, right? Tesla sells every car they make, so consequently they hold their price points. So we can learn from companies like Tesla that there is a time when you don't chase revenues, and that's when you can't make the product.
Very true. Very true. And yeah, the last folks we want to talk about is one of my favorites, Crooked Tooth Brewery. Matter of fact, I was there 2 days ago. And, you know,
you don't drink beer, do you, Manny?
Every once in a while, just on days that end with Y.
Oh, okay. All right.
I probably go in there at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. It's close by the office. I meet folks there. But Ben Vernon, of course, we interviewed him, I would say, 4 months into the pandemic, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was talking about how they had a narrow miss with basically losing their business because of the pandemic. They were no longer able to sell their product at the facility, to consume there. And they were fortunate enough to have purchased a crowler machine, which is a way to seal these big aluminum, I think they're probably 32-ounce aluminum cans. And so I would say that they were sort of working through that. Well, I'm happy to report that they're doing extremely well. They have been pumping out product and are now shipping to restaurants and specialty hop shops and all that. You can find their beer in, I want to say maybe 100 places in town, whereas when we spoke to them, it was probably like 20. Their tap room, they've expanded with some new products. They've been experimenting with some guest taps in there, bringing in some other folks to try to, expand their horizon. And, Ben and his crew are doing very well, from what I understand.
Now, they were, at that time when we interviewed them, there were some eateries around them, and they would tell people they could buy food in the eatery, bring it in, and drink beer. Are they still on that model?
They are. Matter of fact, I was not only that, but they also added charcuterie boards that they provide there in their shop. So it's a way they can provide some high-end snacks. So, and I'm sure that there's pretty high margin on those. But the neighbor pizza place, Anello's, is still serving their Italian-style cold-fired pizza. So they're still doing that.
Yeah, and that was a good conversation, because what we were talking about was, what's your value proposition? What do you want to be? And, it's so easy. Here you are, you're making some beer, you got a beer shop, people wanting something to eat, and the temptation for them was to go open a kitchen, get the license to start to serve food. But the real point was, well, wait a minute, what's your value proposition? And, if you want to run a restaurant or an eatery, I understand that. But their value proposition we talked it through really was around this craft beer business and wanting to offer some products like the sour beer, which they had brought out. And they had these alternate, non-mainstream craft beers, things that you wouldn't find if you were just a normal going into a normal grocery store type situation. And if you did happen to see it, you wouldn't know what it was. So they were really appealing to a connoisseur of beer, people that really cared about the product. Let's say they were fans of the product, not just connoisseurs, but fans for products, fans for alternatives. And that's the value proposition they were going for, was to meet the needs of that, because it was such a growing market. And it would have been a sideline to get into food. And that would have just, reduced their bandwidth to focus on the beer and the beer growth. And it sounds like they made a good decision to stick with that. Now, the second question we focused on that day was their value delivery system and whether or not they should buy a building. And to this day, do you think they bought a building, or are they still leasing?
I believe that they're still leasing. They're in the same spot.
So as you remember, the discussion we had was, do you want to be a realtor? Do you want to be a landlord? And the fact that we had this peaking happening in commercial real estate, that the work from home movement was going to reduce the demand for a lot of this kind of real estate, and that prices were probably going to come down. And that if they just kept pushing the limit of their current location and expanded with short-term leases, they would be better off. So it sounds like they went down that direction as well.
I believe so. And, the way things are trending, at least with the commercial real estate space, is they're probably doing the right thing. They're probably going to be served by waiting another 9 months, 12 months until things cool down. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. And, it'd be kind of nice if we bring these folks back and do a deeper dive conversation down the road and see where they're actually going.
Yeah. I mean, it is fun to review these things, but I think one of the things we're trying to bring up here in this discussion is saying we talk a lot about what's happening in the market with big companies that people know. And why do we talk about that? Because the point here is to say, hey, you can take trends, understand trends, and then apply them to help you make decisions, even in small and mid-sized companies. Most small and mid-sized companies get very focused internally on operations. How do I make beer? How do I make more beer? How do I make better beer? How do I get people to drink more beer inside my tap room? That kind of a thing. And what our workshop materials do is let you get outside that and say, well, wait a minute, instead of looking at it from inside out, let's look at what's the customer thinking, bring that in. And what we're trying to do in the podcast here is help people do that, help people understand how to get outside the box, then think. And so, what we're seeing is the people that do that are going to be in a much better position to grow their business. Some people are in a position they want rapid growth. You want to be the next Amazon. That requires other people's money. If you want to really, really grow fast, then you have to go out and raise money. You have to be good at raising money. A lot of entrepreneurs that we meet are worried about that. They're not skilled at it. They're slow. They're slow to want to go raise money. And we work a lot with, well, don't be so worried about it. You can learn how to do it. There are people you can work with. But in the short term, here, let's figure out what are the high margin places that you go. How do you maintain your value proposition? And how do you build a value delivery system that's sustainable so that you don't get yourself all jacked up with too high a cost that gets you into trouble and end up getting you, burning you up down the road. Flying being a good example. Somebody managed that development of their value delivery system quite well.
Yeah, and this is an open invitation. If you're interested in having your company featured on our podcast, please email Manny@sparkpartners.com or Adam@sparkpartners.com, and we'll put it under review. I know we've got a couple people that are excited to come on that are sort of cued in. One of those is a pest control company that's using big data to actually aggregate information for how they do their basically pest control. It's a new way of looking at pest control, and this is really what this economy is about. You can open up another muffin shop in the corner, but is it really going to scale? Is it really going to take you to where you want to go? And that's something that you have to really review for yourself. The companies that we interviewed, Insulin Now, Crooked Tooth, and Desert Pearl Mushrooms, and even Flying Leap, they have their eyes on growth. They're focused on growth. And whether or not that is sort of the asymptotic growth or is it more leveled growth, but they're still focused on growth, which is what this whole podcast is about. Grow your business by understanding trends, understanding your customers, and knowing what your competition is up to.
It was about, I want to say 3 months ago, we had an episode where we talked about CNN Plus, and that the new acquirers of CNN Plus, Discovery Channel, one of the very first things they did was when they bought CNN, they shut CNN Plus down. And I told how horrible that was, because not only was it a good exploratory environment, it was an area for growth. It was white space, well developed, well funded. They were learning a lot about how to compete in the new marketplace where Peacock from NBC is and Disney Plus was located. And I saw all kinds of benefits to that. And the closing of it down not only stopped those benefits, but it creates a whole different mindset. It creates a mindset of, well, growth around here isn't important. And today, the New York Times reported that viewership at CNN is down by more than 1 million. Profitability has tanked at the company. So here, after all these years of CNN, from Ted Turner and being a pioneer in cable, the thing grows in so many different ways, and it becomes, this behemoth organization. What we see now is that new ownership comes in and says, oh, we're going to put a laser focus on having you do political news, and you're going to do that pretty much all day long, and we're not going to do any more experimentation. And what do? Users, there were some people that probably watched it only because in the Trump era, you never knew from day to day what politicians were going to do. And they started saying, well, it's a little calmer now. I don't need to watch it all the time. And so they quit watching. Fox numbers are down. All news numbers are down. And so, but they didn't create this compelling reason for you to go to do something else, like going to Roku, which, we're out on Roku on Futures TV. That's one of the things you and I do, Manny, with our show. But they said, no, we're going to shut that opportunity down. And so that's why we tell those stories, is because what are you doing in your company as a small business? Are you culturally encouraging people to grow? Like you said, these companies had this culture of growth. We want to grow. How can we grow? What can we do to grow? What are going to be the segments we're going to grow in? And you have to be doing that all the time. That cultural element is really crucial to success. If you become, as a CEO, a Dr. No or a Dr. Slow Walk, if you take that idea to Adam, he'll probably listen to you, but don't expect any action for a year if you get any action at all, because he's going to think about it and talk about it, and he might discuss it with some other people that you don't know, and get opinions from people that don't know anything about the business. If that's what your employees are talking about, the leaders of the company, they're not going to bother to bring up ideas. Yeah. They're not going to bother to try to find new ways to grow. And you are getting stuck in your ways. You're getting stuck in your value delivery system, and you're not trying to find new ways to grow, right? You're not out there chomping at the bit saying, I know I've got to find new markets. I got to find new customers. I got to find, new unmet needs that I can help meet a little bit better. And, you're not doing it. If you're not doing it, company's not doing it, then your fuse isn't very long for your organization.
Yep. And also it really, not only does that internal culture resonate and slow down your team, but it's also reflected out to the outside world. I think it takes a split-second decision of somebody opening up their phone and going to the CNN app and saying, they don't know what's going on. I'm going to go to some other news source. I'm going to just walk over to CNN and go to like a Fox News or MSNBC or somebody else.
And of course, that's what we call the defend and extend mindset. And that the latest product we put out this summer was that workshop series around how to identify how you lock in, how you get stuck in a defend and extend mindset, how that creates a defend and extend culture and kills your ability to grow and doesn't let you see the opportunities. And so if you're not getting the growth you want, it's probably worthwhile to sit down and go through that workshop. What are we charging for that now, Manny?
I think it's $97.
Yeah, and just run through the workshop and see, have you put up barriers to growth unintentionally? Probably by trying to maximize the value of your value delivery system, you've set up barriers to growth by stopping people or not getting the culture right. And for $100, it's worth an evaluation to see if you can just unlock some windows, unlock some doors, and get that culture reactivated again.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for this opportunity, Adam, and we'll be talking to you next week. We've got some exciting things to share with y'all regarding some new people that are coming into our interview space. And I think today was fun. So with that, Adam, have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.